The letter trembled in my hands, its crisp edges cutting into my fingertips. 48 hours of back-to-back surgeries had left me running on fumes, but exhaustion vanished the moment I saw Brad's handwriting. My daughter Samantha stood in our kitchen, arms crossed, watching me with eyes that held too much knowledge for her 16 years. "Dad said you'd be mad." Her voice carried that new edge I'd grown to hate, the one that appeared right after the divorce. I forced myself to breathe. "When did this arrive?" "Yesterday. He told me not to mention it until you got home from your shift." Of course he did. Brad always did have perfect timing, waiting until I was at my weakest to strike. I scanned the legal document again, certain I must be hallucinating from fatigue. But no, the words remained unchanged. Full custody. My ex-husband was actually seeking full custody of our daughter. "He says you're never home," Samantha continued, each word falling like an accusation. "That being raised by a workaholic surgeon isn't stable." The irony might have made me laugh if it wasn't so infuriating. "And living with an unemployed graphic designer who can't keep clients is stable?" "He's freelance, Mom. There's a difference." I set the letter down before I could crumple it into a ball. "Sam, honey, you know why I work these hours. Someone has to pay for my college fund, for the house, for everything. I know." She pushed away from the counter. "But maybe Dad's right. Maybe it would be better if..." "If what?" The words came out sharper than intended. "If you lived with the man who spent our entire marriage avoiding responsibility, who still owes 3 months of child support." "At least he's there." Samantha's voice cracked. "He makes time for me. When was the last time we had dinner together? A real dinner, not just takeout between your surgeries?" The question hit like a physical blow. I opened my mouth to defend myself, but the truth stuck in my throat. When was the last time? 2 weeks ago? 3? My phone buzzed, Megan's name lighting up the screen, probably checking how my marathon shift went. I ignored it. "Sam, please, let's talk about this." I reached for her, but she stepped back. "I have homework." She turned away, pausing at the kitchen doorway. "Dad wants to meet tomorrow to discuss the arrangement. He says his lawyer will be there." The room spun slightly. "His lawyer?" "At the coffee shop near his place, 4 o'clock. She glanced back, and for a moment, I saw uncertainty flicker across her face. He said to tell you it doesn't have to get ugly, that if you agree to the terms, everything can be simple." Simple. Nothing about Brad had ever been simple. I watched my daughter disappear upstairs, her footsteps heavy with teenage angst and divided loyalties. The house fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator and the pounding of my heart. My phone buzzed again. This time, I picked it up. "Tell me you're home and alive," Megan said when I answered. "I'm home." I stared at the letter on the counter. "But I'm not sure about alive." "That bad of a shift?" The shift was fine. 3 successful surgeries, 2 lives saved. I traced Brad's signature with my finger. "But I just got home to find out my ex-husband is trying to take my daughter." The silence on the other end stretched for several seconds. "I'll be there in 20 minutes with wine." "Make it 15, I said, already calculating how many hours of sleep I could sacrifice to prepare for tomorrow's ambush. "And Megan, bring the expensive stuff. Something tells me I'm gonna need it." I hung up and picked up the letter again, reading it one more time. Brad always did underestimate me. He thought exhaustion and guilt would make me an easy target, but he'd forgotten one crucial detail. I didn't become a pediatric surgeon by backing down from a fight. Tomorrow he'd learn exactly what kind of opponent he'd created. The coffee shop's exposed brick walls seemed to close in with each passing minute. Brad sat across from me, his lawyer a stern presence at his side, while my own attorney scribbled notes beside me. The meeting had started 15 minutes ago, But we'd spent most of that time in charged silence, interrupted only by the hiss of the espresso machine. You look tired, Eliana. Brad's voice carried that familiar concerned tone he'd perfected over the years. Those hospital hours really taking their toll? I caught his game immediately. Everything on record, everything designed to paint a picture. I look exactly like someone who saves children's lives for a living, Brad. Let's skip the small talk. His lawyer cleared his throat. We've prepared a reasonable proposal for custody arrangements that takes into account Dr. Matthews' demanding schedule. You mean my successful career? I leaned forward, the one that's put food on our table for the past decade. Brad's smile tightened. No one's questioning your success, honey. We're just concerned about Samantha's emotional well-being. Don't call me honey. The words came out like ice. And don't pretend this is about Samantha's well-being when you haven't paid child support in 3 months. Actually, Brad's lawyer interjected, sliding a document across the table. We have evidence suggesting Dr. Matthews' work schedule has resulted in numerous missed family events and I have copies of every school event I've attended, I cut in, along with records of every time Brad claimed he couldn't make it because of client meetings that mysteriously never resulted in actual work. Brad's jaw clenched. This isn't about me, isn't it? I pulled out my phone, scrolling through messages. Should we discuss the text you sent Samantha last week? The one where you told her I chose my career over her? That was a private conversation with my daughter, who's 16 and increasingly anxious because her father is manipulating her emotions. I turned to his lawyer. Did he mention that part? The lawyer shifted uncomfortably. Brad's face flushed red. You always do this. Turn everything around. Make it about my failures. Dr. Matthews, my lawyer warned quietly, but I was already standing. You want to talk about failures? My voice stayed low, controlled. Let's talk about how you spent 3 years building your portfolio while I worked double shifts. Or how about the time Samantha needed braces and you suddenly couldn't contribute because you were between projects? This is exactly why we're concerned, Brad's lawyer jumped in. Your aggressive attitude is nothing compared to his passive manipulation. I gathered my things. You want to fight, Brad? Fine. But remember, I cut people open for a living. I know exactly where to make it hurt. I walked out, my heels clicking against the hardwood floor, leaving behind a stunned silence. Outside, the autumn air hit my face, and I took my first real breath in what felt like hours. My phone buzzed, a text from Samantha. How did it go? Before I could respond, another message appeared. Dad says you stormed out. Of course he'd already contacted her. I typed carefully. We can talk about it when I get home. Love you. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, working late again? The question felt like a trap. I had a surgery scheduled in 2 hours, a 6-year-old with a congenital heart defect. Her parents had been waiting months for this slot. Yes, I wrote back, but I'll be home for dinner tomorrow, promise. No response. My phone rang, Megan's name flashing on the screen. Well, she asked when I answered. How bad was it? Remember when you said I shouldn't let him provoke me? I started walking toward my car. I may have threatened him with surgical precision. Eliana, I know, but you should have seen him, Megan, acting concerned about Samantha while simultaneously poisoning her against me. What's your next move? I reached my car, but didn't get in. He's been spreading rumors at Samantha's school. I need to know what he's been saying, who he's been talking to. And how exactly? Remember Derek, the architect I've been seeing? The hot one who designed the new pediatric wing? What about him? His daughter goes to the same school. I smiled, an idea forming. I think it's time I started attending more parent functions. Elle, be careful. Brad's already painting you as unstable, which is exactly why I'm going to be the model of stability. I got into my car, while quietly discovering exactly what kind of web he's been weaving. And Samantha? My smile faded. That's the tricky part. I need to fix this without making her feel like another battlefield. You will, Megan said softly. You're a better parent than he'll ever be. I started the engine, checking the time. Thanks, Meg. I've got to go save a life now. But later, we're planning war. The parent-teacher conference buzzed with the usual mix of anxiety and forced politeness. I navigated through clusters of chatting parents, Derek's steady presence beside me, until Mrs. Chen's familiar voice cut through the noise. Dr. Matthews, what a surprise! Her tone carried an edge I'd never heard before. We didn't expect you given your schedule. I always make time for what's important. I smiled, noting how she wouldn't quite meet my eyes. How's Samantha doing in AP Chemistry? Mrs. Chen shuffled some papers. Perhaps we should discuss this privately. Of course. I turned to Derek. Would you mind? Actually, Mrs. Chen interrupted, Mr. Harrison, Samantha's father, requested to be present for any parent-teacher discussions. The pieces clicked together. Did he now? And when exactly did my ex-husband become so involved in Samantha's academics? He's been very concerned lately. She glanced around nervously. About Samantha's home environment. I bet he has. I leaned forward, lowering my voice. What exactly has Brad been telling you? Dr. Matthews. Because I'd love to hear why my daughter's grades dropped right after he started showing up here regularly. Derek touched my arm. Elle, maybe we should… No. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through messages. Here's what I think happened. Brad started dropping by, probably during lunch hours when he should have been working. He told you all about his concerns for Samantha, living with her workaholic mother. Did he mention the prescription drugs? Mrs. Chen's eyes widened. He said you take them to stay awake during surgeries? That's what he's telling people, isn't it? I placed my phone on her desk, displaying a series of text messages. These are from Brad to Samantha. Notice the timestamps, all during school hours. He's been feeding her stories about me, then coming here to reinforce them. I didn't realize… Of course not. Brad's very good at what he does. I straightened up. But here's what you should know. I've never taken drugs. I have quarterly medical screenings to prove it. What I do have is a successful career saving children's lives, while my ex-husband hasn't held a steady job in years. The classroom door opened. Brad stood there, his timing perfect as always. Eliana, what are you doing here? Funny, I was about to ask you the same thing. I turned to face him. Since when do you attend parent-teacher conferences? Since our daughter needed stability. He stepped in, closing the door. Mrs. Chen, I apologize for this interruption. Don't apologize for me, Brad. I moved closer, aware of Derek tensing behind me. Tell her the truth instead, about the missed child support payments, the manipulation, the lies. You're proving my point about stability. His smile was razor sharp. Having another episode? Episode? Mrs. Chen echoed. Don't. My voice dropped dangerously low. Don't you dare. It's okay, honey. Brad's concern was theatrical. We all understand the pressure you're under. Something snapped. I pulled up another message on my phone and held it up. Read it, Mrs. Chen. Brad's text to Samantha last week, telling her to record me if I act weird again. Part of building his case for custody. Brad's face darkened. That's private? Like the rumors you've been spreading here are private? I turned to Mrs. Chen. Check your records. Every absence, every missed assignment, they all coincide with Brad's increased involvement. He's not helping Samantha. He's sabotaging her to get to me. That's enough. Brad reached for my phone. Derek stepped between us. Touch her, and this gets much worse. The room crackled with tension. Mrs. Chen stood, clearly uncomfortable. Perhaps we should reschedule. No need. I gathered my things. I've made my point. But Mrs. Chen, next time my ex-husband shares his concerns, ask yourself why a father would deliberately hurt his daughter's education just to spite his ex-wife. I headed for the door, then paused. Oh, and Brad, those quarterly medical screenings I mentioned, they're public record. Feel free to check them. Unlike some people's freelance portfolio, they actually exist. Outside, Derek caught up with me. That was intense. It's going to get worse. I stopped walking, my hands shaking slightly. He's been playing this game for months, poisoning everyone against me. The school, our friends, Samantha. So, what's our next move? I watched through the classroom window as Brad spoke urgently to Mrs. Chen, his charm working overtime to repair the damage. Now? I took Derek's hand, squeezing it gently. Now we go nuclear. Call your daughter. I need to know everything Brad's been saying at student events. And then? I smiled grimly. Then we're going to give him exactly what he wants, a public spectacle, just not the one he's expecting. Megan's office felt like a confessional, sterile, and safe. I sat in her visitor's chair, turning my phone over and over in my hands while she reviewed the latest email from my lawyer. He's requesting a psychological evaluation? Megan's voice carried disbelief. On what grounds? Apparently, my erratic behavior at the parent-teacher conference raises concerns about my mental stability. I set the phone down before I could throw it. Brad's been laying this groundwork for months. The rumors about prescription drugs, the suggestions about my work hours affecting my judgment. That manipulative bastard. Megan leaned forward. But you can fight this, right? A knock interrupted us. Derek stood in the doorway, his face grim. We need to talk. Now. My stomach dropped. What happened? He closed the door behind him. My daughter just called. Samantha's in the principal's office. She had a panic attack during class. What? I grabbed my purse. Why didn't they call me? Because Brad was already there when it happened. Derek's jaw tightened. He's been having lunch with her at school 3 times a week. Did you know? The betrayal hit like a physical blow. No, she told me she was studying with friends. There's more. He hesitated. The school counselor wants to meet with both parents. Brad's convinced them Samantha's anxiety stems from instability at home. Of course he has. I sank back into the chair. He's been planning this all along. Every move, every conversation, building up to this moment. Megan touched my arm. Elle, maybe it's time to consider a different approach? I stood up, pacing. What approach? If I fight back legally, he uses it as evidence of my instability. If I back off, he gains more control. If I try to expose him, he twists it to his advantage. Then maybe, Derek spoke carefully, maybe we need to let him win. What? Hear me out. He wants control, right? So give it to him, temporarily. Let him think he's winning while we gather real evidence. Megan nodded slowly. He'll get sloppy if he thinks he's succeeded. No. The word came out sharp. I won't let him think he's broken me. I won't. My phone buzzed. Samantha's text. Mom, please don't be mad. Another buzz. Dad says you need help. Maybe he's right. The room spun slightly. I gripped the back of the chair, reading the messages again. My daughter, my brilliant, perceptive daughter, now believed I was unstable. Elle? Megan's voice seemed distant. What do you want to do? I looked up at Derek, then back at Megan. I want to destroy him. That's not an answer, Derek said quietly. No? I pulled up my calendar. Watch me. First, I'm going to that counselor meeting. I'll play exactly the role Brad's created, the overworked, emotional mother. I'll agree to the psychological evaluation. I'll even tear up a little. And then I'm calling in every favor I've earned in this hospital, every nurse who's covered my shifts when Samantha was sick, every colleague who's witnessed Brad's negligence firsthand, every parent of every child I've saved who's seen me balance motherhood with saving lives. Understanding dawned in Megan's eyes. You're going to build your own narrative. Better. I smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I'm going to let Brad destroy his own. Because here's what he doesn't know. I've been recording everything. Every manipulative text, every missed payment, every lie he's told Samantha about me. And soon, very soon, our daughter's going to see exactly who her father really is. That could backfire, Derek warned. Samantha might not forgive either of you. Maybe. I gathered my things. But I'd rather have her hate me for telling the truth than love me for playing along with lies. My phone buzzed again. The hospital. Another emergency surgery. Perfect timing, I muttered. Brad will love this. Want me to go to the school? Megan offered. No. I straightened my coat. I'm going to do exactly what Brad expects. Choose work over family. Let him think his plan is working. Let him believe he's winning. At the door, I paused. But first, I'm going to save a child's life. Because that's what unstable, unfit mothers do, right? We just keep right on saving lives while plotting our revenge. The door closed behind me with a satisfying click, leaving silence in my wake. It was time to show Brad that some surgeons were equally skilled at removal and reconstruction, whether it was damaged hearts or carefully constructed lies. Derek's daughter, Emma, sat across from me in the hospital cafeteria, nervously shredding a napkin. Dad's gonna kill me for telling you this. No, he won't. I pushed my untouched coffee aside. What exactly did you hear? It wasn't just what I heard. She pulled out her phone. I started recording stuff after Dad told me what was happening. Mr. Harrison, Brad, he's been talking to everyone at school. Parents, teachers, even some students. My hands clenched under the table. Show me. The video was grainy, shot from behind a row of lockers. Brad stood with two other parents, his voice carrying that familiar concerned tone. Really worried about Samantha. The other night, Eliana showed up at 3 a.m., completely erratic, started screaming about conspiracies. That never happened. The words came out sharp enough to make Emma flinch. There's more. She swiped to another video. This time, Brad was with a teacher. The prescription drugs are just the beginning. Last week, she forgot to pick up Samantha because she was too out of it. The cafeteria light suddenly felt too bright. When was this? Last Tuesday, the day Sam had her panic attack. My phone buzzed, a text from Samantha. Staying at Dad's tonight. Need space. Another buzz followed. Maybe you should talk to someone. Dad knows a good therapist. Of course he did. I bet the therapist knew all about my episodes already. Dr. Matthews? Emma's voice pulled me back. There's something else. Yesterday, I overheard him on the phone talking about some kind of investment scheme. Something about using Samantha's college fund. The world stopped spinning for a moment. What? He was arguing with someone about access to accounts, said something about temporary borrowing and guaranteed returns. My coffee cup shattered in my grip, sending lukewarm liquid across the table. A nearby nurse rushed over with napkins, but I barely noticed. Emma, I need those recordings. My voice sounded distant, even to myself. All of them. I already sent them to Dad. She helped mop up the coffee. But Dr. Matthews, Mr. Harrison saw me filming yesterday. He smiled and waved. Ice slid down my spine. He what? Like he wanted me to record him. She lowered her voice. Dad says it might be a trap. My phone buzzed again. An email from Brad's lawyer requesting an emergency hearing about temporary custody. The timestamp matched exactly when Emma had been filming him yesterday. He's playing us. The realization hit like a physical blow. He wanted us to gather evidence. Now he can claim I'm stalking him, using Derek's daughter to spy. Emma's eyes widened. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. It's not your fault. I stood up, already dialing Derek's number. But I need you to delete those recordings right now. All of them. But now, Emma, please. She complied, but her hands shook. What are you going to do? The answer came with surprising clarity. I'm going to give Brad exactly what he wants, a public meltdown, just not the kind he's expecting. Derek answered on the first ring. Elle, what's wrong? Remember that charity gala next week? The one where Brad's new client is receiving an award? Yeah, but get me an invitation. I watched Emma delete the last video. It's time to show Brad that if he wants to destroy someone's reputation, he should pick someone who doesn't know where all his bodies are buried. Eliana, wait. I hung up, turning back to Emma. Thank you for telling me. Now go home and forget everything you've seen. If anyone asks, especially Brad, you never spoke to me. She nodded, gathering her things. At the cafeteria door, she paused. Dr. Matthews, Dad says you save kids' lives every day. Maybe that's what really scares Mr. Harrison, that you're stronger than he is. After she left, I sat alone, staring at the coffee stains on the table. My phone kept buzzing. Samantha, Derek, Megan, Brad's lawyer. I ignored them all, focusing instead on the memory of Brad's smile as Emma filmed him. He thought he had all the pieces in place, every move calculated, but he'd forgotten something crucial. I didn't just fix broken hearts in the operating room. Sometimes I had to break them first to save the patient, and Brad's carefully constructed world was about to go into cardiac arrest. The charity gala sparkled with false promises and designer dresses. I adjusted my black evening gown, feeling the USB drive press against my ribs where I'd hidden it in my bra. Across the ballroom, Brad worked the crowd, his new client hanging on every word. Are you sure about this? Derek whispered, his hand steady on my lower back. He's using Samantha's college fund for some investment scheme. My champagne glass trembled slightly. Our daughter's future, Derek. That's where I draw the line. Mom? I turned to find Samantha standing behind us, wearing a blue dress I'd never seen before. Brad must have bought it for her. What are you doing here? The question came out sharper than intended. Dad invited me. Her eyes narrowed. He said you might try something tonight. Of course he did. I set down my champagne. Sam, there are things you don't understand. Like how you hired Emma to spy on Dad? She stepped closer, voice low. He showed me the evidence, the recordings, the photos. How could you? The room tilted slightly. That's not what happened. Save it. She pulled out her phone, showing me a series of messages, conversations between Brad and his lawyer about my harassment campaign. Dad's filing a restraining order tomorrow. He says it's the only way to protect me. Protect you? My laugh sounded hollow. Samantha, he's stealing from you. Your college fund is being invested. Brad's voice cut through the conversation as he appeared behind our daughter. I was going to surprise you both next week. The returns are guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed. I reached for my purse, where I kept copies of his shady dealings. Except maybe how you'll manage to lose everything just like last time? Brad's smile was razor sharp. When I lost our savings on that startup, the time you never let me forget about, he turned to Samantha. See what I mean about her instability, the paranoia? Derek stepped forward. That's enough. Actually, Brad pulled out his phone. Perfect timing. Security? Yes, she's here, just like I warned you she might be. Two men in black suits approached. One spoke into his earpiece. Dr. Matthews, we need you to come with us. What? I looked around, suddenly aware of the watching crowd. This is ridiculous. Mom, please. Samantha's voice cracked. Don't make a scene. Just go. Listen to our daughter, Brad said softly. Before you do something else, you'll regret. The USB drive felt like it was burning against my skin. One move and I could expose everything: the fraudulent investments, the manipulated messages, the calculated destruction of my reputation. But Samantha's eyes held something worse than anger now: fear. She was afraid of me. Okay? The word tasted like defeat. I'll go. Derek tried to follow, but I stopped him. Stay with Sam. The security guards escorted me through the whispers and stares, past colleagues who wouldn't meet my eyes, past Brad's triumphant smile. In the lobby, one guard spoke quietly. Dr. Matthews, we have instructions to contact the authorities if you return. Please don't make this difficult. Outside, the night air hit like a slap. My phone buzzed, a message from Samantha. Dad's right. You need help. Please get help. Another buzz. Brad had tagged me in a social media post about the incident, expressing his deep concern for my well-being and asking for prayers during this difficult time. The final buzz was an email from the hospital board requesting an immediate meeting about my recent behavior. I stood alone on the sidewalk, watching through the window as Brad hugged our daughter, playing the concerned father perfectly. He'd orchestrated everything: the recordings, the witnesses, the security. He'd known I'd try to expose him tonight and turned it into the final proof of my instability. My phone buzzed again, Megan calling. I ignored it, along with the tears threatening to fall. Crying wouldn't help. Nothing would help now. Brad had won. A car pulled up, Derek's. He must have followed despite my warning, but I turned away, starting to walk. Eliana, wait! Go back to Samantha, I called over my shoulder. She needs someone stable in her life. His footsteps faded as I walked into the darkness, still wearing my evening gown, still carrying the evidence that now seemed worthless. The USB drive pressed against my heart like a reminder of everything I'd lost. But somewhere between the tears and the anger, a new thought formed. Sometimes a surgeon had to let the heart stop completely before bringing it back stronger than before. And my heart, it had just flatlined. 3 days after the gala disaster, I sat in my empty house, staring at resignation papers from the hospital board when my phone lit up with an unknown number. Mom? Samantha's voice crackled with static. Can you hear me? Sam, what's wrong? I'm at Dad's office. I needed his laptop for a school project, but... She paused, breathing heavily. Mom, there are emails about the college fund, about everything. My heart stopped. Where's your father? Meeting with investors. Mom, he lost it. All of it. And there's more. Recordings of him coaching people what to say about you. Payments to his lawyer to fabricate evidence. Samantha, listen carefully. Don't touch anything else. I'm coming. No time. Keys clicked in the background. I'm forwarding everything to you now. But Mom, I'm so sorry. I should have... The line went dead. My phone buzzed immediately. Dozens of emails flooding in, bank statements, conversations, evidence of Brad's elaborate scheme to destroy me while stealing our daughter's future. Another buzz. Brad. My office, now, alone. I grabbed my keys, but before I could reach the door, another text. Tell anyone where you're going, and Samantha learns what really happened the night you lost that patient last year. The night I'd been cleared of any wrongdoing. The night Brad had apparently been gathering ammunition. I drove through rain-slicked streets, my mind racing. Brad's office occupied the top floor of a renovated warehouse, all exposed brick and industrial chic, perfect for impressing clients he never kept. The elevator doors opened to darkness. Only his office light burned at the end of the hall, a beacon drawing me in. Brad sat behind his desk, Samantha's phone in front of him. Our daughter stood by the window, tears streaming down her face. "Delete them," he said without looking up. "The emails?" I stayed in the doorway. "Little late for that. All copies, now." He finally met my eyes. "Or I released the story about your negligence last year. Your career's hanging by a thread already. One push." "You really want to talk about negligence?" I stepped forward. "After stealing your daughter's future?" "I was protecting her future." He stood suddenly, making Samantha flinch. "Everything I did was to get her away from you. By destroying me? By making her think I was unstable? You are unstable, a workaholic surgeon who paid every bill while you chased get-rich-quick schemes." I moved closer. "Who covered your mistakes? Who protected Samantha while you played victim?" "Stop it." His face reddened. "Samantha, tell her. Tell her how much better things have been with me." But Samantha wasn't looking at either of us. She was looking at her phone, her real phone, which she'd pulled from her pocket while Brad focused on me. "Actually, Dad," she held up the device, "I think I have something else to tell." The blood drained from Brad's face. "What are you doing?" "Recording, just like you taught me." Her voice shook but held firm. "I've been recording everything. Every conversation where you coached me what to say about Mom. Every time you bragged about destroying her reputation. Everything." "Samantha." "I sent copies to Mom's lawyer 10 minutes ago." She moved away from the window, toward me. "It's over, Dad." Brad lunged for her phone, but I stepped between them. "Touch her, and your reputation won't be the only thing that needs surgery." He froze, then laughed, a hollow sound. "You really think anyone will believe you after everything?" "They'll believe the evidence." Samantha's voice cracked. "The real evidence, not your edited versions." "I did this for you." He slammed his hands on the desk. "Everything was for you." "No." She grabbed my hand. "Everything was for you. It always was." We left him there, surrounded by his schemes and lies. In the elevator, Samantha collapsed against me, sobbing. "I'm so sorry, Mom. I should have seen it sooner." I held her close, feeling her shake. "You saw it exactly when you needed to." My phone buzzed, the hospital board requesting an urgent meeting about new evidence coming to light. Samantha looked up at me. "What happens now?" "Now?" I wiped her tears away. "Now we rebuild, together." The elevator doors opened to rain-washed streets and the first hints of dawn. Behind us, in his tower of lies, Brad faced the consequences of his greatest manipulation, underestimating the daughter he claimed to protect. Sometimes revenge wasn't about destroying someone. Sometimes it was simply about letting the truth speak for itself. The hospital boardroom felt different this morning, warmer somehow, despite the October rain drumming against the windows. I sat between Derek and Megan as the board reviewed the last of Brad's exposed lies. "Dr. Matthews," the chief of surgery closed his folder. "I believe we owe you an apology." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed. A text from Samantha. "Dad's trying to call again. Should I answer?" I typed back. "Your choice. Always your choice now." The board continued their formal reinstatement speech, but my attention drifted to the window, where a young mother cradled her child in the parking lot below. Yesterday's surgery had saved her daughter's heart, a complex repair that required breaking things to fix them. "There's one more matter," the chief added. "Your ex-husband's client list included several hospital board members' companies. Given the evidence of his financial improprieties, there may be legal implications." "I'm a surgeon," I said quietly. "I fix hearts. What happens to Brad isn't my concern anymore." My phone buzzed again. "Samantha. He says he can explain everything. that he did it because he loves me. Derek squeezed my hand under the table as I replied, "Sometimes love isn't enough. Sometimes it's just another word for control." The meeting ended with handshakes and awkward apologies. In the hallway, Megan pulled me aside. "Brad's lawyer called. He's offering a deal. He'll sign away all parental rights if you drop the criminal charges." "That's not my decision." I checked my phone. Samantha had gone silent. "Those charges came from his investors, not me." "L." Megan hesitated. "Are you sure you're okay with how this ended? It feels almost too easy." "Easy?" I laughed, but there was no bitterness now. He lost everything trying to destroy me. His reputation, his clients, his relationship with Samantha. That's not ease, that's karma. Speaking of karma, Derek appeared with his tablet. Brad's latest social media post is interesting. I glanced at the screen, a long, rambling confession about mental health struggles and seeking help. The comments section overflowed with support from people who didn't know the truth. Let him have his narrative. I handed back the tablet. Some people need lies to survive. I don't anymore. My phone buzzed one final time. Samantha again. I told Dad I can't see him for a while, that I need time. He started crying, said he never meant to hurt anyone. "Want me to come pick you up?" I texted back. "No, Emma's mom is driving me to your place. Dad kept saying he did everything for me, but I think he did it all for himself." Is that weird to finally understand? No, honey, that's called growing up. In the hospital lobby, Derek pulled me close. "Your daughter's pretty amazing, you know." "She is." I watched the rain slow to a drizzle. She recorded everything because she needed to know the truth, not just about Brad, but about herself, about what she's capable of. "Like mother, like daughter," Megan said softly. My pager buzzed. Emergency surgery needed. Another heart requiring careful hands to break and rebuild it. "Go," Derek smiled. "Save a life. We'll handle dinner with Samantha." As I headed to the OR, my phone lit up with one last message from Brad. "I never meant for any of this to happen. Please, can we talk?" I deleted it without responding. Some hearts couldn't be fixed. Some shouldn't be. In the surgical prep room, I caught my reflection in the mirror. No more shadows under my eyes. No more weight of his manipulation pressing down. Just a surgeon ready to do what she did best, repair what was broken. But as I scrubbed in, I thought about Brad's social media confession, about how easily people believed what they wanted to believe. Maybe that was his real punishment, spending the rest of his life pretending to be someone he wasn't, while Samantha and I lived honestly with who we were. "Dr. Matthews?" A nurse poked her head in. "Patient's ready." I nodded, feeling the familiar calm settle over me. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, helping Samantha heal, rebuilding trust, finding balance. But right now, in this moment, there was just a heart that needed saving, and that, at least, was something I knew how to do.
So, are we taking the car today? Or maybe your place? Let's go to a hotel. On the way back from the hospital, I saw my husband walking hand in hand with a young woman. Who could she be? She was wearing revealing clothes. And I think she was more than 10 years younger than my husband. She doesn't look like someone from his company. Could it be an affair? Even though it was right after returning from a donor test for a disease that had been discovered in my husband. I somehow managed to control my emotions and glared at my husband when he came home that evening and asked, "I saw you walking with a young woman. What is that all about? Betraying me like this is the worst. How can you do something so awful? No. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're such a great woman? Marriage is supposed to be supported by the man. And the moment a woman stops being a woman, it all falls apart. Men always want young and attractive women. What is he talking about? There's no excuse to ruin a marriage for such selfish reasons. It seems he's trying to justify his actions, but it's just an affair. I will never forgive him. I don't need a menopausal old hag like you. Should I just divorce you? Divorce? I've been thinking about it for a while now. You can't get pregnant. As a woman, you're finished. You look old, and you're not attractive at all, so I've been wanting to break up. That's why I cheated and was attracted to a younger woman. It's only natural, right? I understand. Then let's get a divorce. But don't forget. You're the one who's carrying a ticking time bomb inside your body. And who will be there to help you with that? My name is Kim, and I currently work as an office clerk in a small to medium-sized enterprise. Although I work as an office clerk, I initially joined this company as a salesperson. I'm back. Welcome back. How was today? Well, I was brushed off lightly. I'm sorry. It was a project that you had been warming up, and I couldn't land it. Well, don't worry too much about it. It can't be helped, so don't get too down. He was my senior who took care of my training. This person was truly kind to me. He taught me everything from scratch about sales, and I worked hard following his teachings, but I guess my personality, which couldn't speak assertively and shrank from slightly aggressive attitudes, wasn't suited for this. My sales performance was always among the lowest, and I felt uncomfortable within the company. Since it was a small to medium-sized enterprise, we were all trying to increase the company's sales. But I felt like I was the only one dragging everyone down. Should I quit? Maybe it's better to change to a different profession. That's what I had started to think. Excuse me. Can I have a moment? What's up? I heard that you were looking to hire a new office clerk. Yes, that's right. The company has grown a bit, and I want to increase the number of office staff. Do you have someone you know who wants to apply? Not exactly. I was wondering if I could apply myself. I've been trying hard as a salesperson for the past 2 years. But I haven't been able to achieve results, and I feel like I'm holding others back. Even when there are good projects, I can't land them because of me. So if possible, I'd like to work as an office clerk. I see. In my mind, by becoming an office clerk, I thought it would benefit the company if we could fill the vacant sales position from outside. Of course, I felt sorry for my senior who had been nurturing me, but I was also mentally suffering. Understood. I've heard about your troubles from other employees. And I think you can handle a certain level of office work, so if you're okay with it, let's do that. Really? Of course. But about the salary, it will be that of an office clerk. Is that okay? Of course. No problem. All right. After that, I started working as an office clerk, mainly interacting with the employees I got along with. So there was no need to uselessly strain myself or stay on edge. Certainly, the salary was less than when I was in sales. But I could work without accumulating stress, so every day was truly brighter. After that, through an acquaintance, I started dating a man. And both my work and personal life were fulfilling. I promise to always cherish you. Will you marry me? Really? Are you really going to marry me? Of course. I will protect you for the rest of my life. I was so moved by the proposal from the man I was dating that I cried. I had never had confidence in myself, and I didn't think anyone would marry someone like me. Because I had always thought that way, I became very emotional. Although I started in sales, I eventually moved to an office job, which was one of my complexes. I couldn't handle even the basic tasks assigned to me. I had always been a negative thinker. Of course, the stress of work disappeared, but the truth is, my confidence continued to diminish. That's why I vowed in my heart to cherish the man who chose me. Then our married life began, and we were a couple working together. Living a problem-free married life. However, hey, can you cover the living expenses? In return, I'll save money. Huh? Am I supposed to cover all the expenses?
Yeah.
I'll save the rest of the money after taking out my allowance, so that's okay, right? This is my weakness. When spoken to strongly, I can't talk back. Since I only receive a small salary as an office clerk, after paying for rent, food, and utility bills, there isn't much money left. We moved to a reasonably large apartment after getting married. And though it was secondhand, we also bought a car. We had agreed to split expenses equally. Understood. But I'm a bit surprised. I thought we were going to split everything equally. It's easier if you manage all the expenses. I'll manage all the savings, so don't worry. Well, if my husband says so, maybe it's better that way. Plus, if he's saving most of his salary, I think we can save up a significant amount in a short time. I wanted to save as much as possible, thinking about having children in the future. That's why I accepted his proposal. However, after we got married, he started going out more at night. Hello. Aren't you coming home yet? I'm going out for drinks with colleagues today, won't be back until midnight. Again. What? I'm not your parent, don't meddle in my private life. It's my business who I drink with and where, right?
Yeah.
Indeed, we had agreed not to interfere with each other's privacy even after marriage. It's not that I dislike him going to drinking parties. It's just that I'm dissatisfied with him going out without any notice. I come home earlier than him and wait while cooking. I always prepare the bath since he comes home at a set time. I just wish he would contact me. If he did, I would make something simple for dinner and finish the household chores. Then take a bath time, being ready for the meal time. A simple message would suffice. I have mentioned this a few times. But my husband doesn't seem to care. Maybe he doesn't understand because he never cooks or does household chores himself. Also, his personality changes when he drinks. That's why I couldn't say much about it. Hey. Your lord and master is home. Welcome back. Oh, hello. Sorry. He seems pretty drunk. I'm sorry too. Thank you for bringing him home. That day around midnight, my husband came home, escorted by a colleague. He was so drunk he couldn't even walk. You're not a student, please understand your limits when drinking. I was dismayed. It's pointless to say anything now that he's drunk. I thanked the colleague who brought him home and helped my husband to the bed. He fell asleep immediately, and around noon the next day. Hey. Got any medicine? Medicine. Huh? Hangover medicine, obviously. Why don't you understand that without me saying? It's only natural to prepare that if I'm going out drinking, right? I'm sorry. I'll go buy it right now. Run and come back in 10 minutes. What does he think I am? I sighed, but without complaining, I cycled to the nearby pharmacy. It was already winter, and just pedaling made my dry skin sting painfully on my face and hands. If you're going to drink, you should buy your own medicine beforehand. Why do I have to do this? As I went to buy it, I felt a surge of anger towards my husband. I'm back. I got the medicine. Took you long enough. You're always so slow. That's why you can only work as an office clerk. I went out of my way to buy it, and not a single word of thanks. I was astounded by his lack of gratitude, but I wasn't expecting anything from my husband anyway. Well, he's the type to take advantage of others, so probably he doesn't feel grateful at all. That's why he can't even say thank you. I don't care anymore. It's none of my concern. While complaining, my husband took the medicine from me, swallowed it, changed his clothes, and went out again. Going out again. It was a day off, so he could do whatever he wanted. But I wished he would help with the household chores a bit. I do everything on weekdays, so it would be nice if he could help at least on the weekends. Even just one day on the weekend would be fine, but since we got married, he has never helped with the housework. I was timid, so initially, I thought he was a manly person who could lead me, but now, it seems he's just selfish and looks down on others. I was getting sick of these days, but that day, something unexpected happened. Can we talk? I have something important to discuss. Something important. About work? No. About my illness. I've been feeling unwell lately, and I often have hyperventilation at work. So, I went to the hospital, and they discovered I have a disease. You're kidding. I always thought he was strong and rarely caught a cold. So I was truly shocked by my husband's confession. I had never imagined that my husband could be sick. However, according to him, the disease had progressed significantly. And he urgently needed an organ transplant. We need to find a donor, and it can't happen immediately, but the situation seemed quite serious. So, you don't need to be hospitalized? I got some medicine, so I'll be okay, for a while, but I still need a donor. You should go to the hospital this weekend and get tested. If you're a match, I'll need you to be the donor. Having heard that from my husband, my heart skipped a beat deep inside. Of course. If there's anything I can do for my husband, I want to help him with all my might. That's how a marriage should be, and it's what I should do. However, if possible, I did not want to be a donor. One reason is that my husband had not been treating me with care as his wife. It seemed he only saw me as a tool to be used. The only time I felt cherished as a wife was during the first month of our marriage. Also, I was scared of undergoing surgery. Of course, with someone in front of me needing a donor, it wasn't the time to be scared of surgery. But being mentally weak, I couldn't make the decision even though I knew I had to. So, what was the result? You are a match. We can perform the surgery on a day that suits you. The next day, I took a day off work and went to the hospital for tests. I hadn't told my husband, but the result was a match. I could save my husband's life, that was the outcome. No matter how little he cared for me, he was still my married partner. Of course, I was scared of the surgery, but I vowed in my heart to donate for my husband. However, on the way back home that day. So, are we taking the car today? Or maybe your place. Let's go to a hotel. On the way back from the hospital, I saw my husband walking hand in hand with a young woman. Who could she be? She was wearing revealing clothes. And I think she was more than 10 years younger than my husband. She didn't look like someone from his company. Could it be an affair? Indeed, my husband often came home late at night. But I thought it was just because he was out drinking with colleagues and seniors. But, could he actually have been spending pleasant nights with a mistress? The reality was, there in front of me, my husband was walking hand in hand with a young woman. This couldn't be happening, it was a complete betrayal of me. My mind went blank, and I was completely panicked, but without noticing me, my husband went on his way. I took a deep breath and somehow calmed my emotions as I went home. That evening, when my husband returned, I glared at him and pressed him for answers. I saw you walking with a young woman. What is that all about?
Ah.
You saw that? Yes. Betraying me like this is the worst. How can you do something so awful? No. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're such a great woman? Marriage is supposed to be supported by the man, and the moment a woman stops being a woman, it all falls apart. Men always want young and attractive women. What is he talking about? There's no excuse to ruin a marriage for such selfish reasons. It seems he's trying to justify his actions, but it's just an affair. I will never forgive him. He had been using me thoroughly, probably because he no longer saw me as his wife. My suspicions were correct. To my husband, I was nothing important. I was just a convenient existence who paid the bills and did the housework and cooking. To take people lightly like that, that's too much. You're not planning to take any responsibility for this, are you? Right. I don't need a menopausal old hag like you. Should I just divorce you? Huh? I've been thinking about it for a while now. You can't get pregnant. As a woman, you're finished. You look old, and you're not attractive at all, so I've been wanting to break up. That's why I cheated and was attracted to a younger woman. It's only natural, right? Ridiculous. What does he think marriage is? And I had never thought he looked down on me to this extent. But having it said so clearly actually felt refreshing. He was sick, and yet he was the partner I married. I thought there might be some fluctuations in my feelings, but I was completely done. Does he want a divorce? Then I'd gladly grant it. But never forget this. I will never forgive what you've done. If you want a divorce, I'll give you one. But don't bother me anymore, okay? You better not come back asking to remarry me. I'm completely cutting ties with you. Understood. With that, I had him submit the divorce papers. The divorce was finalized quickly, and since the apartment was registered in my ex-husband's name, I moved out, ending our life together. I then prepared for a lawsuit for compensation and contacted him a month later. I disliked direct contact, so I had a lawyer who was helping with the compensation claim contact him. But that evening, my ex-husband called me repeatedly. I didn't want to talk to such a person or hear his voice. But I decided to let out all my feelings. I boldly picked up the phone. Hey. What do you mean you were the donor? That was the first thing my ex-husband said. I hadn't told him when we divorced. But the affair had been exposed on the day I found out I could be a donor. If I hadn't known about the affair then, I would have unknowingly been a donor to a betrayer. I thought God must be watching, and I also thought there was no way I'd donate to him. Of course, keeping silent was one option, but this was my revenge. While you were having fun with a young woman, I was worried about you and went for a donor test. It seems I'm a match, but I have no intention of helping a betrayer. No, don't say that. If you don't donate, I'll have to start looking all over again. Please. Then tell me what's in it for me. I see no benefit in donating, do I? It might look like I'm heartless just from the text. But I don't want to sacrifice my body to help my ex-husband. Even if there were benefits, I couldn't bring myself to reach out to my ex-husband. The emotional wounds my ex-husband inflicted on me were deep. And I wanted him to understand that. I was your wife and thought I should be the donor. But who betrayed that? Who is the person at fault here? That's true, but that's a different story. Just your cooperation could save a precious life. Life is equal. Of course, I believe that. There's no difference in the weight of life, and every person holds the same value. However, I couldn't see this monster of desire as a human being. Even if no donor is found in the end, that's just how it is. It would only mean that what he has done has come back to haunt him. I don't feel sorry for him if his illness worsens, and I think he should do as he pleases. If you get better and are left unchecked, more women will end up hurt like I was. Wouldn't it be better if you never recovered? What are you saying to a sick person? You didn't cherish me as your wife, so why should I care for you as a sick person? Don't you see the contradiction in what you're saying? You're the one talking nonsense. What do you think human life is? I have more morals than you. But even denying that, I don't want to help you. Besides, I'm a stranger to you now, so I don't know. Once he realized I had no intention of being a donor, my ex-husband either groaned or began to moan. How miserable. I felt no pity and just wanted to end the call quickly. Is that all? Oh, and I think you've been contacted by the lawyer? But make sure you transfer the compensation properly. That too. That amount of money is ridiculous. It's not ridiculous at all. Didn't you tell me that you wanted to save up, so I should pay all the living expenses? But it turned out you were just squandering it on your mistress. Do you think that's acceptable? It also came out during the divorce that my ex-husband's savings, which he intended as his share of the assets, were almost gone. Since I paid all the living expenses, I had the right to half of the savings. However, since he had squandered it away, there were no savings left. It was clear from the beginning of our marriage that he had been betraying me. I will make sure to get the money I'm owed. I don't have any money. And I'm going to have a lot of expenses coming up. Right. Moving costs, payments to me, medical bills, huh? Can't you afford that? If you knew that, why did you ask for such an amount? Why? Because that's how you take responsibility as an adult. Don't you know that, even after being in the workforce for over 10 years? I'm at a loss for words. Because it's common sense. And if you don't pay, I'll ask the lawyer to take it to court. If you're prepared for that, do as you like. My ex-husband must know he is 100% at fault, but he's probably hoping somehow I'll reconsider. As he is truly in a desperate situation now. No sign of remorse. If there had been even a slight hint of regret, there might have been room for compassion. But it seems that people who betray others will always continue to do so. Wait a minute. Surely that can't be. If you do that, you'll regret it later. You will definitely have a day of regret. So what? No matter how you try to convince me, my decision won't change. But I was gradually getting annoyed at my ex-husband's attitude. Surely he was shocked to find out I was the donor, and he must be regretting his choices deeply. But if he's regretting it, why doesn't he choose to apologize? To truly apologize, isn't that what he should do before making excuses and talking nonsense? Without even an apology, his words to me were, "You'll regret it?" Does he think threatening me will make me agree to donate? With such a personality, really, no one will ever come forward to help him. You see? It's because you only think of yourself that no one wants to help you. You don't think you've done anything wrong, do you? What? If you had even a little regret, you could at least apologize, right? I'm asking if you're reflecting on what you've done to me. Of course. I'm sorry. So about the donor. Normally, you apologize without linking it to the donation, right? Apologize then ask for the donation? Are you joking? Can't you stop joking around? No matter what I say, it's useless. Maybe I was foolish to expect anything. It's pointless to ask such a person to reflect. That's why I chose the option to divorce him. And make him pay compensation instead of giving him a chance. I've had enough. It's a waste of time to keep dealing with such a person, so I decided to end it. I don't care what you do from now on, but I will definitely not help you. Keep that in mind. My feelings won't change under any circumstances. And if you don't pay the compensation, I'll have the lawyer take it to court. With that, I ended the call. Afterward, I left all communication to the lawyer, and though I didn't have anything direct to say, his life was quite miserable indeed. Actually, that person quit his job due to a stress-related illness, you know? From stress? Yes. He was scared that if no one donated, he couldn't survive. Of course, his life isn't immediately in danger, but he was apparently under a lot of stress. To think that such a brazen person could feel stressed was a bit surprising. If he could feel stressed, he should have considered my feelings a bit more. Then he might have understood what it feels like to be cheated on. How much stress builds up when you're treated like a tool. Even if he had understood, it might not have changed anything. But he did pay the compensation. I wonder how he managed to pay such a large amount. I think he took out loans. Loans? Yes. He borrowed a considerable amount from consumer finance, and that's how he paid. But now he can't repay it, and he's been contacting people he knows asking for help. He even tried to contact me, but I ignored him. You ignored him? Well, after all he's done to exploit and betray you, my dear friend, it's only natural. It's the retribution he deserves. Not only from me, but he can't even get help from his own friends. Now he's battling not just his illness, but also loneliness. Well, it's entirely his own doing, and I think it's a harsh lesson. How much harm he has done and how much trouble he has caused me. If he can't even understand that in this situation, it's a sign that he's finished as a person. Well, probably being finished is why no one wants to extend a hand to help him. But maybe his mistress will stand by him? Maybe she's his only emotional support? No, they've already split up. What? Oh. Didn't you hear? It seems she was only after his money and has moved on to another man already. I was honestly surprised to hear that even his mistress had left him. But thinking about it, it makes sense. My ex-husband had spent most of his earnings on his affair. That means he was spending thousands of dollars each month. He was just a regular employee, but to his mistress, he must have seemed like an easy mark as long as he was spending so much each month. But she disappeared once she realized there was nothing more to take. Such continuous betrayal might make my ex-husband distrustful of others, I thought. But at the end of the day, it's his own fault. Well, since he's always been deceiving and using me, he can't complain about being deceived and used himself. He did the same thing, after all. Exactly. Well, whatever happens to him now is none of our business. Just as she said, there's no point in thinking about my ex-husband anymore. Since then, I've completely forgotten about him and am enjoying my second life. I'm still working as an office clerk, and the salary isn't high nor the job fulfilling. But I'm needed and appreciated by the other employees. And that alone makes me feel that it's worth doing this job. Sometimes I still think about the donor issue. Of course, considering what my ex-husband did, there will always be people who criticize my decision to refuse the donation. Morally, I can understand if some say my choice was wrong. But everything resulted from the choices he made, and I have no regrets about my decision. No matter how much suffering my ex-husband endures in the future, it has nothing to do with me. Let him continue to suffer. That is the way he can atone for his sins, I believe. Marriage isn't just something on paper. It's a declaration of the intent to cooperate and help each other through anything. However, those who betray that easily will eventually be betrayed by somebody. And what they do comes back to them. I intend to live on, valuing the people and the environment around me, so I don't end up like my ex-husband.
Mom, Kevin. One day when I returned home from school, my mom and brother Kevin, who were supposed to be at home, were nowhere to be found. Evening came and they had not returned, nor had my dad come back from his office. I touched the handle of the refrigerator and hesitated for a moment. Normally, I wouldn't even go near the fridge as my mom would scold me for wasting electricity. My stomach growled loudly, and unable to bear the hunger any longer, I opened the door. Inside, there were only condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise. Desperate to satisfy my hunger, I took out the ketchup and sucked on the tube, but the sourness and sweet salty taste made me cough. I put my mouth directly under the faucet and poured tap water into my body. It didn't feel like it was filling my stomach at all. Just then, I heard a noise from the entrance. Thinking that my mom and everyone had come back, I rushed to the entrance, but it was my grandma who stood there.
Sherry, weren't you supposed to be in England?
Both my grandma and I were surprised and looked at each other.
Your dad, Mom, and Kevin just left for England. I thought you went with them.
The expression on my grandma's face was not only one of surprise, but also mixed with sadness and anger.
This is terrible.
With a resolved nod, my grandma said,
Sherry, from today, let's live at my house.
She smiled kindly and gave me a piggyback ride. Her back was broad and very warm. My name is Sherry Hansen, and I'm in my 20s. I currently live with my grandma, who has weak legs. Going up and down the apartment elevator is hard, but I have never thought of taking care of my grandma as a burden. On the contrary, I feel a debt of gratitude to my grandma that I can never fully repay. If it weren't for my grandma, I would be... My family environment has been complicated since I was young. I was bad at learning words, and even when I became a grade school student, my reading and writing were slower than other kids, not only in language studies, but also in other subjects. My grades were among the lowest. Both of my parents graduated from prestigious universities, and it seemed they resented me for not being academically inclined.
Do Mom and Dad hate me?
As I muttered to myself, not understanding why my parents hated me, I often fell asleep at night crying. I have an older brother named Kevin, who was 5 years my senior. Unlike me, Kevin had been quick to learn from a young age and always achieved top results in school tests. In school and around the neighborhood, he was called a prodigy, and for my parents, Kevin was a source of pride. My mom always compared me with Kevin and sighed, saying,
Because of you, the whole family feels embarrassed. Please don't go outside more than necessary.
And with that blunt way of speaking, she clearly showed her displeasure. I'm sorry, Mom. That was all I could do, always apologize. As the day of the test approached, my mom would always say,
You'll disturb Kevin,
and kick me out of the room, laying a cushion in the hallway for me.
You'll sleep here for a while starting today,
she told me, but it was during the cold winter and I shook my head and refusal. Seeing that, my dad, with a demonic expression, yelled in agreement with my mom.
Don't complain, you useless girl. Be thankful you're not kicked out of the house.
At that time, I didn't know the word unreasonable, but I couldn't understand why only I had to suffer like this, and tears of frustration and anger flowed endlessly. My mom's harassment escalated, and eventually she made me kneel in the hallway and said,
Eat this.
She poured dressing on vegetable peels that were supposed to be thrown away as garbage and made me eat them. Meanwhile, my family enjoyed warm soup in the heated dining room, chatting happily.
Hey, did you know Kevin got the top score in his last test?
It's just a fluke. Thanks to Dad and Mom sending me to a top-level tutoring center, I can concentrate on my studies. Thank you as always. Don't get cocky. Just because you topped your local elementary school, don't get too proud. You need to aim higher, Kevin. I understand. I will continue to study diligently.
After finishing the vegetable peels, I held the empty small plate and asked, Mom, I want some warm soup too. My mom glared at me.
Why don't you drink the leftover bathwater?
She laughed with my dad and Kevin. Listening to the family's conversation, enduring hunger and cold, I sat on the hallway cushion, hugging my knees, waiting for dawn. In that situation, there appeared one person who became my ally. It was my paternal grandma. She had lived far away, but when she started a handmade class, the house she had lived in was too small, so she moved to a vacant house nearby. When I returned home from school, my grandma beckoned me with a smile.
Welcome back. Did you enjoy school? I've prepared some snacks, so have some before you go.
As dusk fell, I watched my grandma prepare dinner in the kitchen. When she noticed my gaze, she turned and asked,
Sherry, you should go home soon. Isn't your mom preparing dinner waiting for you?
I shook my head vigorously. Mom doesn't cook for me.
Then what do you usually eat?
Vegetable peels? Tap water? My grandma rushed to me and hugged me tightly.
From today, you'll eat at my house.
Really? Is that okay?
Of course. Sherry, you're still growing, so you need to eat a lot and grow big.
Thank you, Grandma. I couldn't stop the tears as I felt someone's warmth for the first time. From that day on, I began sneaking away to my grandma's house to eat meals, taking advantage of the times when my family was not around. Being able to eat a warm meal to my heart's content was such a reward. Now that I'm an adult, things that seemed ordinary were precious to me back then. Students started flocking to my grandma's new handmade class. Neither my grandma nor her students ever treated me as a nuisance, but I stayed quietly in the corner of the room drawing so as not to bother anyone. I was terrified of being disliked by my grandma as well. Without her, I would have no place to go at all. During those times, drawing was the only thing that could make me forget the unpleasantness. One day, knowing my situation, my grandma stormed to my parents' house and confronted them.
What are you thinking? Not even feeding her properly. Sherry is your child too.
But my dad just frowned in annoyance and retreated to his room, leaving my mom to deal with it. She sighed and responded,
It's part of a parent's duty to discipline a child for bad grades. Even if you are my mom-in-law, please don't interfere with our parenting.
After my grandma left, my parents scolded me harshly.
Why did you tell Grandma something like that? I come home tired from work and this is just annoying.
Exactly. You're already incompetent, so don't cause us any more trouble.
I'm sorry. With a heavy heart, all I could do was apologize.
From tomorrow, stop going to Grandma's house to play. When someone like you walks around the neighborhood, it embarrasses us.
They warned me sternly. Feeling down, I walked through the hallway and met my brother Kevin coming out of his room.
You have it easy, always playing freely. I have to study hard every day because I'm capable.
I took his sarcastic remark to heart and glared back at him, too upset to reply. Then one day,
a friend of mine works in an educational institution in England, and when I told him about Kevin, he suggested, why not send him to college here?
To a college? But Kevin is still in elementary school.
No need to worry. It's a meritocracy over there. Regardless of age, those who can perform are given opportunities. Kevin could easily skip grades. Besides, we can't just keep him in America's lower-level education through middle and high school. It would be like throwing money away.
That's true. With Kevin's abilities, he should aim higher for his future. Okay, let's plan to move there as a family soon.
Thank you for doing this for me, Dad, Mom.
While listening to the discussion about moving abroad, I was overwhelmed with anxiety. Would I just be a burden to my family there? I called out to Kevin as he was about to return to his room. Kevin, should we really go to England? Kevin snorted and said dismissively,
That's not something you need to worry about,
and retreated to his room. I couldn't understand what Kevin meant by that. Trying to think positively about moving to England was hard, considering how my family had treated me so far. Then one day, when I came home from school and searched the house calling, Mom, Kevin, but I found no sign of my mom and brother. Evening came and they had not returned, nor had my dad. That day at school, my teacher had said something strange.
Is your dad and mom coming to pick you up later?
The teacher looked puzzled, but I had no idea what she meant and was at a loss for words. What did that mean? Were my parents going to take me somewhere? However, no matter how long I waited, no one from my family came back. I hesitated for a moment before touching the handle of the refrigerator. Normally, I wouldn't even approach the fridge, as my mom would scold me for wasting electricity. My stomach growled loudly, and unable to bear the hunger any longer, I opened the door. Inside, there were only condiments like ketchup and mayonnaise. Anything is fine if it fills me up, I thought, and sucked the ketchup from the tube, but coughed due to the intense sourness and sweet salty flavor. I put my mouth directly under the faucet and poured tap water into my body. It didn't feel like it was filling my stomach at all. Then I heard the door open from the entrance. "Mom!" Thinking everyone had come back, I rushed to the entrance, only to find my grandma standing there. "Sherry, weren't you supposed to be in England?" Both my grandma and I were surprised and looked at each other. "Your dad, Mom, and Kevin just left for England. I thought you had gone with them." There was not only surprise in my grandma's expression, but also a mix of sadness and anger. "This is just terrible." With a determined nod, my grandma said, "Sherry, from today, let's live at Grandma's house." She smiled kindly and gave me a piggyback ride. Her back was broad and very warm. From that day on, I started living with my grandma. When I returned home from school and said, "I'm home," my grandma would respond with a bright, "Welcome back," from inside the house. That made me happier than anything. Sometimes while sleeping, I would dream of my parents and brother leaving me behind and going somewhere far away. When I woke up, my pillow would be soaked with tears. Abandoned by my family and having forgotten how to smile, my grandma told me, "Those people aren't your family. From now on, I am your family." She hugged my trembling body tightly every night. Thanks to her, I stopped having those scary dreams.
Thank you for today.
My grandma's handmade class was popular and many students gathered there. On that day, I quietly drew pictures in a corner of the room so as not to be in the way. I really wanted to play more with my grandma, but I wasn't in a position to ask too much. If even my grandma started to dislike me, I would truly have nowhere to go. I never wanted to lose family again. After the class and seeing the students off, my grandma smiled widely and said, "Sherry, thanks for waiting. How about we eat some ice cream together?" She took out the ice cream bars she had bought from the fridge and handed one to me.
"Grandma, it's delicious."
The ice cream bar was sweet and cold, but more than anything, I loved the time spent eating with my grandma. Trying to prolong those moments, I ate my ice cream slowly on purpose, but eventually it melted and dropped on the floor. "I'm sorry, Grandma." Afraid of being disliked, I tensed up and instinctively apologized. If it were my mom next to me, I would have been punished by now. However, my grandma just chuckled and said, "Oh dear," without shouting at me. Instead, she gently stroked my head and said, "Don't be scared. Everyone makes mistakes. Instead, keep smiling, Sherry. I love your smiling face the most." From here on, I slowly began to regain my smile. After dinner, having bathed and getting ready for bed, my grandma would teach me how to read and write every night.
"This is written like this. See? And now you try."
Following my grandma's example, I tried to write. At first, my writing was crooked or completely backward.
"Don't rush. If you practice every day, you'll gradually get better at writing."
Her teaching was very clear, and slowly my aversion to words decreased. Within a few years, I could read and write well enough for daily life.
"My summer reading assignment got praised by the teacher." "That's wonderful, Sherry."
One day, as I quietly drew while watching my grandma's handmade class, a student took a break and approached, peeking over my shoulder at my drawing.
"Wow, Sherry, you're good at drawing."
At that exclamation, other students gathered around to see my drawing, raising similar cheers.
"She can draw this accurately with just a pencil? She might be a genius. Especially the expressions of the people and the lines of the clothes. They're too real, like at a professional level."
At that time, I was drawing my beloved grandma. I thought the students were just exaggerating out of consideration for my grandma. I was simply drawing what I saw directly onto my sketch pad. After the class and the students had left, my grandma intently looked at the drawing I had made. "Those people were making a big deal, huh?" I laughed jokingly, but my grandma gave me a serious look.
"Not at all. You might have a talent for drawing, Sherry."
I was skeptical, saying, "Really?" But I recalled being praised in art class at school, where teachers and classmates had said, "You're amazing." Back then, I thought they were just being kind because I had been abandoned by my family. Indeed, I had no idea how much talent I had in drawing. Am I really drawing that well?
"Yes, you are. You have a promising future, Sherry. I know someone who runs an art school. How about you study there?"
"Oh, yes, I'd love to." It was my grandma who gave me a clear goal. 12 years have passed since then.
Sherry! Wow, the real deal. We're fans of yours, especially your affection series. The expressions of the people, the warm colors, just looking at them makes us cry.
Saying this, a woman much older than I burst into tears and reached out for a handshake. I also exchanged handshakes with the woman and smiled for the camera during the photo shoot, despite my wry smile.
Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to more of your work, Sherry.
The gallery was packed every day. I had achieved success as a contemporary realist painter known by the name Sherry.
Miss Hanson, you have a TV appearance scheduled for this evening, so we should start getting ready soon.
Understood, but wait a moment. I stopped the manager and looked down. A little girl was desperately reaching out, asking for a handshake. Thank you. Do you always support me? The girl smiled but didn't make a sound. A woman who seemed to be her mom hurried over and picked her up.
I'm sorry, she's not good at talking to people.
It's okay. Don't rush her. I used to struggle with writing myself, but if the family around her watches over her kindly, she'll find something she loves and eventually shine.
Thank you.
Despite stumbling over the pronunciation, the girl tried her best to express her feelings. You're welcome. As I shook the girl's hand again, her mom hugged her tightly and said with a broad smile,
I'm glad.
Seeing their interaction, I thought to myself that this child would surely be all right.
It's almost time.
Prompted by the manager, I began preparing to leave when the entrance of the hall became unusually noisy.
Please wait. I can't let people without tickets enter.
Looking towards the center of the commotion, I saw a shabbily dressed man and woman. The security guard was desperately trying to stop them, but they pushed past and marched straight towards me.
Let go. We're her family. We don't need tickets.
That's right. You have no right to stop us.
Although they looked completely different from what time had made them, the moment I heard their voices, I felt a chill down my spine. I wanted to run from the place, but my legs were frozen. The man and woman were my dad and mom.
It's your dad. You remember, right? Sherry?
And your mom. I'm so happy to see you.
As the security guards hesitated upon realizing they were my relatives, my parents casually walked up to me. Despite being only in their 40s, they looked much older, easily mistaken for being in their 50s or 60s.
You've become so impressive, Sherry. When we saw your face on a huge advertisement in New York, both your mom and I were shocked. We never imagined our daughter would become so famous.
I always believed in you. I knew you would make it big someday. I'm so glad we had you.
Stunned by the elderly couple's attitude, as if nothing had happened over these 12 years, I was at a loss for words.
What's the matter? You've been so quiet.
Who are you?
What are you saying? You haven't forgotten, have you? It's your dad.
Yes, you must be shy because we appeared so suddenly. You're just surprised, right? That's it, isn't it?
How selfish can people be? What are you doing here now? Though I asked, I deliberately avoided eye contact.
What do you mean, what are we doing here? From today, let's live together again. That's why we came.
I don't know these people. Please have them removed. I instructed the security guard in a flat tone, but the guard, unable to grasp the situation, looked confused. My family is only my grandma. I don't know these people.
You can't possibly still be holding a grudge about that time, can you?
Sorry about that. That was our fault.
My dad apologized insincerely, without any sign of genuine remorse.
But really, holding on to such old grudges, you're still a child, aren't you? We're family. It's normal for a family to live together. You need to grow up.
That's ridiculous. I couldn't contain my anger. The only person I can call family is my grandma. You abandoned me and went overseas, but she was the only one who stood by me. I won't recognize you as my family now. My mom clenched her lips and glared at me. Yes, that look. The cold gaze as if she were looking at something filthy.
If you hate us that much, we'll give up on living together. But in exchange, could you give us just one of your paintings?
Dad's out-of-place request left me struggling to comprehend.
Actually, we're a bit short on money. I heard that your paintings go for $1 million each. Wouldn't it be okay to give us just one?
You have your precious son, Kevin. Why don't you ask him for help? I don't pay for you. I will not give you any of my paintings.
Don't talk about Kevin. I don't even want to hear that guy's name.
Suddenly, my mom screamed almost like a shriek. Why would you say that? He's your son, isn't he?
That guy is no son of ours. Just a disgrace.
Then the two of them bitterly recounted what had become of Kevin over these past 12 years. After moving to England with his family, Kevin quickly entered a prestigious university thanks to his innate academic skills.
Up to that point, he met our expectations.
However, not long after that, Kevin lost his motivation to study. He stopped attending university and fell into a rough lifestyle, hanging out with bad company during the day. No matter what his parents said, he wouldn't listen, and eventually he stopped coming home. Over time, he even had run-ins with the police. The Kevin described by his parents had truly become a lost cause. Yet, I couldn't help but feel sympathy for Kevin. He must have been another victim of these parents' torment. A few days after my family had left for England, I found a notebook in Kevin's room. It contained his frustrations about being forced to study every day, not being allowed to play with friends. He wrote about how scoring A on a test in first grade had forever set his life's path by his parents' expectations. And he envied me because I was not expected to study. When we were kids, Kevin once told me he envied me, but reading his notebook made it all click into place. My dad spoke in a hushed tone, making sure others couldn't hear.
Just between us, Kevin's a lost cause. We tried to rehabilitate him by bringing him back home, but who knows where he is or what he's doing now. Recently, the police came asking about him.
He seems to be hanging out with dangerous people. Might be involved with one of those scam groups that are all the rage now. It's only a matter of time before he gets arrested.
So, as you can see, if you pity us being tormented by such a foolish son, please, could you just give us one of your paintings? That alone would save us. It's your chance to do a filial deed, isn't it?
Saying this, my parents started to kneel before me.
Enough of this nonsense.
The one who shouted suddenly was my grandma in her wheelchair.
I've been quiet, listening all this time. Kevin's gone bad, so now you turn to Sherry for help? You must be joking. You were the ones who abandoned her.
Ugh, Mom, why are you here?
It's my precious granddaughter's exhibition. It's only natural for family to come.
With that, my grandma glared at my dad and Mom. You two are no longer family or anything else to her. You're just strangers. Now understand and get out.
Hey, security, what are you doing?
After being scolded by my grandma, the bewildered security guards started to act.
Wait a minute, we have our own ideas. Ideas? Let's hear these ideas of yours. You kidnapped our daughter, didn't you?
Kidnap?
You were the ones who abandoned her and went overseas.
Though my grandma was furious, I managed a wry smile and said, Calm down, Grandma. Getting all worked up like that will just raise your blood pressure. Then, facing my smirking parents, I said firmly, I have some unfortunate news for you. Legally, my grandma and I are now mom and daughter. Thus, she cannot be accused of kidnapping.
What nonsense are you talking about? That's impossible without the consent of us, her real parents.
Actually, it's possible. I was adopted by my grandma when I was 15. Legally, anyone over 15 can be adopted without the consent of their biological parents.
Don't be ridiculous. How can that even be allowed?
As my parents continued to fuss and tried to sit down in the gallery, they were escorted out by police officers who had been called to the scene.
Sherry, are you all right?
My grandma asked, rubbing my back with her usual kind smile. Don't worry, Grandma, I'm fine, I replied, returning her smile with a wide one of my own. After being taken to the police station, my parents were reportedly scolded severely by the officers.
Are you even fit to be parents?
A friend who had moved from the cultural to the social section of a newspaper had let me know discreetly. Later, I learned through the news that Kevin had been arrested for fraud. The image of Kevin being put into a police vehicle appeared on the TV screen, a far cry from the prodigy he once was called. My parents ended up facing hefty damages for the crimes committed by Kevin, and with reporters crowding outside their home daily, they were on the run.
Help us out, will you? Aren't we your real parents?
Yes, have you forgotten that we were the ones who brought you into this world?
Despite their repeated attempts to approach my home and studio, my grandma and I decided to move to a high-security condo to prevent them from easily reaching us.
I'm sorry to have you take care of an old grandma like me.
No, I'm very happy. After all, I owe everything I am today to you, Grandma. Around this time, my grandma started to fall ill frequently. I hugged her tightly from behind and said, "I love you, Grandma." Her back had grown much smaller, but it was as warm as ever.
My name is Mandy Gale. I've been married for 3 years and don't have any children yet. The more we wish for a child, it seems, the harder it is to have one. My husband and I live with his parents. Since we haven't had children in 3 years of marriage, living together hasn't changed the outcome. That was the reason for living with my in-laws. And my husband agreed to this nonsensical reason. We live in such a big house. It won't be a problem if my parents move in, right? I couldn't argue with that. Indeed, there aren't any problems, and it's just a bit of extra care. However, what surprised me after moving in was that my in-laws believed this big, spacious house was purchased solely with my husband's salary. And they think my card is being paid for with his income and freely spend as they please. My husband is 30 and works a regular office job. An employee of his age wouldn't earn such a high salary. Yet, without any doubt, they believe whatever my husband says. So, how is such a thing possible? Because I am the president of a company with over 1,000 employees. However, I haven't even told my husband about this. If my husband knew about my salary, he would definitely become dependent on me and turn into a good-for-nothing. I've learned since we got married that he is extremely dependent and can easily lie. That's why I decided never to reveal my situation. But it can't stay hidden forever. After all, my husband works at my company. One day, he saw a company brochure and exclaimed with sparkling eyes, "Hey, Mandy, you've become the president?" Considering my husband prefers playing over working, he shouldn't be looking at company brochures. I hadn't cared about the brochure. However, as my husband excitedly showed it to me, I felt an internal panic. That's when I told a painful lie. It's a misprint. A misprint? Yes, I told them to correct that, but it seems they haven't yet. Why would there be a misprint? Well, you see, it's my father's company. I'm just the secretary, but the person in charge made a mistake. Oh, I see. I thought you had become the president for a moment. Too bad. If you were the president, I could have lived off playing. As if that could ever happen. If I were the president, I would be earning more and living a better life, wouldn't I? Right. A woman couldn't possibly handle being a president, huh? I thought he was a fool for believing such a silly lie, but I was truly grateful he was a fool at that moment. However, this level of foolishness was starting to become unbearable. The thing is, for about a year now, my husband has been growing colder. I don't know why. I loved him and envied his carefree nature, which I could only dream of since I took everything too seriously. And I thought he loved me too. But it seems I was only me who thought so. That belief turned into certainty the day I saw my husband walking and chatting cozily with the receptionist. I had no idea she was his mistress and casually approached them. "Mandy." My husband's face turned pale in an instant. "Why are you here?" "Huh, the way you're surprised, could it be you?" Then the receptionist, Sarah, laughed and said, "I've got the company heir." "What? Who's the heir?" Confused by her unclear words, my husband hurriedly added, "Unlike the gloomy and unsociable woman, a model-like lover. I love Sarah. That's why I've decided to remarry her." What? I didn't understand what he was saying. Certainly, the woman in front of me was young and beautiful, like a model. I think it was my husband who said we should hire a beautiful woman for the receptionist because it would make a good impression. I thought it was good enough if she could do her job, but my husband, believing I was the secretary, told me, "The reception is the face of the company." It has to be a beauty, or it'll turn the clients off. Tell that to the president. And so Sarah was hired. Certainly, wherever you look, the receptionists are beautiful, so hiring a beauty would indeed be better for the image. I naively thought so. But I never imagined it would turn out this way. Remarry? How? You're married, aren't you? I have to divorce first, obviously. Of course I'll divorce. You intend to divorce me? Yes, of course. You are really gloomy and don't suit me. What suits me is a bright and charming woman like this. I see. I didn't know how to respond to his seemingly innocent words. Nor could I, as the president, start yelling and screaming. I see. Congratulations. Inadvertently, pride took over, and words that seemed to condone his infidelity slipped out. I left the scene and headed to our house my husband would probably not return to. When I got home, I entered the bedroom and sat down in a daze. The scene kept replaying in my mind. Sarah's arm wrapped around my husband's. His face, beaming with joy. Sarah is pointing at a brand store, expressing her desire for something inside. My husband nods in agreement, referring to me with the words, the gloomy and unsociable woman. I thought. So, I wasn't loved after all. I was the only one who loved him, and he saw me that way. I finally understand why Brian has been cold to me. If he's in a relationship with such a beautiful woman, it makes sense that he would grow cold. Moreover, if he's considering remarriage, there couldn't possibly be any love left for me. All I had was the profile of being the president's daughter. Was our marriage just based on that attraction? What a sad marriage it was. When we first married, I never imagined it would come to this. He was kind and always gave me plenty of sweet words. When I was troubled by small things, he reassured me that such worries were trivial and eased my anxieties. How happy that made me feel. Until the president left the office, I couldn't leave either as his secretary. My husband believed this lie and prepared meals for me. This stopped once we started living with his parents. It's only natural for a wife to cook. It's wrong not to take care of the home just because you have a job. After a tiring day, I'd come home to find delivered meals on the table, all plates empty. There was nothing left for me, and my husband and his parents were contentedly sprawled in front of the TV. In the end, it was my job to clean up the dirty dishes, and the trash can was stuffed with boxes I had never seen before. It felt so empty and lonely, and I wondered why I was the only one who had to endure this. I couldn't understand any of it anymore. But realizing that infidelity was the reason, I thought I couldn't just let this go. I thought. That's right. I should consult with my father. If anyone has a good idea, it would be the chairman, my father. Grabbing my bag and glancing at my in-laws sprawled in front of the living room TV, I dashed out of the house. The next day, I summoned my husband to the president's office. He arrived in the president's office with a broad smile, thinking the president was my father. Huh? Where's your father? Dad's in the chairman's office. Why are you here? This is the president's office, and it's odd for you, the secretary, to be sitting in that chair. Even if you are family, you shouldn't casually sit in the president's chair. Only someone like me, the next president, should sit here. You, a regular employee, will become president? I'm just a regular employee now, but I'm your husband, so it's only natural. Well, Dad is sitting in the chairman's office, in the chairman's chair. What? So, someone else is sitting in the president's chair? The person in front of you is sitting, huh? What are you talking about? You're just the president's secretary. How long will you keep thinking that? What? I am the president. Huh? What are you talking about? There's no way you, a woman, could be the president. If that were the case, this company would have gone bankrupt. But the company hasn't gone bankrupt. You say a woman can't handle being president, or that women can't do proper jobs, but here I am, managing just fine as president. This makes no sense. Isn't it time you accepted it? You're joking, right? I displayed the company's website on the computer screen, showing him my photo with the title President. What, even the website is wrong? You better get it corrected. You refuse to believe it, don't you? You might not want to believe that your wife is the president, but this is the fact. Pointing to the nameplate on the desk, I showed him the title President, clearly written next to Mandy Gale. No way. Looks like you finally believe it. So, that's how it is. Now I can live off playing around. What are you talking about? Didn't you say yesterday that you were divorcing me? Well, that was just. Then. I order your transfer. What? A transfer? Why does it have to be like that? You've been unfaithful, and you're also planning to divorce. It's only natural that you face some consequences. If I'm transferred, I can't become president. President? Why do you think you could become president? I'm your husband. Yes, you are. Don't we need a successor? You seem to forget an important thing. I am younger than you. Logically, I'll live longer. So, there's no need for a next president. But I married you so I could become president. But you've decided to divorce, so there's no way you can be president, right? Just because we're divorced doesn't mean that won't happen. You're so carefree. I never intended to make you president in the first place. And you want to remarry her, right? If I'm around, that'd be inconvenient for you, so I'll grant you a divorce. Here, sign here. It's already filled out. I placed the pre-filled divorce papers in front of my husband. However, understanding that signing this would be final, he seemed unable to reach for the divorce papers immediately. You don't need to take it now, but I'll make sure the divorce goes through with the help of a lawyer. I no longer acknowledge you as my husband. What? If Sarah finds out I can't become the president, she might just leave me. It's quite something to say that in front of your wife. If you want to remarry her, you'll have to divorce me first. Or do you intend to keep her as your mistress? Either way, I'm done with you. Well, beauties like her are rare. Then there's no choice but to divorce, is there? I'm going to divorce you, so you can remarry or do whatever you like. Worrying won't change the outcome. You're still going to be transferred to the subcontracting transport company. To the transport company? Yes, you betrayed your wife, the president, so that's what you deserve. Now, our conversation is over. Call your girlfriend. What are you going to do with her? She will be transferred to a different department. Are you trying to separate us? Whether you get separated is your own issue. Given the mess you've made, some form of punishment is necessary. This is a corporate decision, so nothing you say can change it. Please, don't be too harsh on her. I'm not going to do anything terrible. Just what's necessary. Hurry up and call her in. As I shouted this, Brian's shoulders slumped and he left the president's office. The next person to come in was the receptionist, Sarah. Huh? Why is his wife here? Do you also doubt that I am the president? But Brian said it was a typo that you are the president. Believe it or not, I don't care. But as you've taken the president's husband, you will be transferred to the factory. The factory? Why? Why does someone as beautiful as me have to go to the factory? Is there a problem with a beautiful woman working at the factory? But the factory is for old ladies and men, not for someone like me. That's a misconception. What are you talking about? I hate this. It's ridiculous. Even if you do this, it won't break us apart. I don't care if it does or not. I've already given him the divorce papers. If you're going to remarry, do as you please. Really? Yes. Then I can marry into the company's heir family? Heir? Yes. Marrying him means I could eventually become the president of the company. It might not be right now because of this incident, but once things cool down, he's bound to become the president. After all, he's the president's son. You seem to be under some major misunderstanding. Well, that's fine. But are you serious? Do you really love him? Of course. I thought. She thinks he's the heir. If you love him that much, you should be able to endure. Endure? What do you mean? Hasn't he told you anything? Told me what? He lives with his parents. That means I've been living with the in-laws. The in-laws are big spenders and don't even cook for themselves. So you'll have to do all the cooking or rely on delivery. Since I was president, I often came home late, and they used to order delivery almost every day. Well, that's okay. I don't think delivery is bad. But his salary won't cover the costs. But he has managed until now. Because of my income. Oh. They could do that because I was the president. So now, you'll have to cook daily, or it'll be tough. He'll do it, I'm sure. You think so? He doesn't do housework. He thinks that's a woman's job. Even if the trash bin is overflowing, he won't move it back. Really? Well, okay. I get to live in that big house, after all. The house? Yes. That house was bought with his salary. So even if you divorce, that house stays with us. There will be no division of property. Oh, you think so? Of course I do. Well, you'll see. Just be careful of the in-laws' spending habits. I'm out of it anyway. He'll handle it. After all, they're his parents. It's not my concern. Besides, if they like delivery, it will save my labor. I like delivery too. More importantly, there's no way someone as beautiful as me should do kitchen work, my hands would get chapped. You think so? I hope that belief won't change. You're just trying to scare me, aren't you? Huh? Female jealousy is scary, isn't it? But I appreciate you letting me know about the divorce. So, can we pretend the factory transfer never happened? I'm not going to the factory, and I'm quitting the company. Quitting? Yes, why should I work so hard when I'm about to marry him? I'm going to marry into a wealthy family. I'm about to debut in high society. There's no need for me to work. Wow, that's very optimistic of you. Well, okay then. Sarah then said, I'll submit my resignation letter. And left my office. However, despite her confident words, it seemed my comments had struck a chord. That night, she shared her anxieties with Brian. Hey, is there anything you need to tell me? Huh? No, nothing at all. I was told I'd be transferred, but what about you? Well, I will stay at the headquarters because I'm the president's son. So your life remains unchanged? Of course, I'm the heir. Who else would run the company if I were gone? But Mandy is currently the president, right? Oh, yeah. That's temporary. After this cools down, I'll take over as president. Running a company involves a lot of external affairs, you know? But don't worry, being my wife was just a role she played. Once we're divorced, she won't be around anymore. Really? Yes, really. That's a relief. I quit my job because I was told I'd be working at the factory. What? Well, a beauty like me doesn't belong in a factory, right? Yes, of course. Don't worry, I'll take care of you. After all, I'm the heir. So everything she said was just to scare me. Who? You mean Mandy? Yes, she called me in today and said a lot. But there's nothing to worry about, right? Because everything you say is consistent. You being the heir is an undeniable fact, right? Absolutely. Sarah smiled at Brian, but just then, his phone rang. Seeing my name on the screen, he tapped the answer button. What's up, calling at this hour? Sorry to interrupt your fun time, but I have something important to discuss. What is it? The house. You need to move out within a week. What? Why? I'm giving the house back to my father. Why? We're divorced, and it's inconvenient if you don't leave. Can't I just stay? No, you can't. It's my father's property. Why does it work like that? You said it was a gift. He was just lending it because we were newlyweds and I was the president. It seemed pitiful to let us live in a shabby place, so he bought and lent us that house. But now that we're divorced, you wouldn't want to live in a house full of memories, right? It's just my father being considerate. I don't mind living in a house full of memories. You have no right to live there. It's my father's property. If you really want to stay, ask my father. But we lived there, it should be part of our shared assets. It should be divided. As I said just now, the house was borrowed from my father. It's not subject to division. Everything in that house was also provided by him. But I'll give you all the money in your bank account. Not much, but better than me taking half, right? But where am I supposed to go? Isn't there a room where she lives? It's just an apartment. That's not my problem. You chose it. And make sure to take your parents with you. Damn. I forgot about my parents. Oh, that's too bad. Come on, since my parents are there, let us stay in that house. Your parents are your responsibility. It has nothing to do with me. With that, the call was abruptly ended. A week later, Brian and his parents moved out. Their new home was, of course, Sarah's apartment. They must be managing somehow as a family of 4. At least, that's what I thought. However, 3 months later, Brian called again. This is the worst. As soon as I answered the phone, he blurted out without any greeting. Oh, what happened? She found out everything I told her was a lie. What you told her? What kind of things? That I was the heir, the president's son. That I was still working at headquarters and would someday become president, despite being assigned to delivery. What? That's nothing but a bunch of lies. All lies, huh? I had no choice. I don't see how you had no choice. I thought if we got married before the lies were uncovered, then it wouldn't matter if they eventually came out. Once we were married, it wouldn't be easy to get divorced. So, you did get married, didn't you? That's just it, she refused. Plus, she said she couldn't stand living in a cramped apartment with 4 adults. If we were to marry, she said I'd have to sort out a house. Well, that makes sense. She started saying that it didn't make sense, the moment we divorced, to let go of the house which I used to say was mine. And that if I'm a true heir, I should be able to sort out a house. I can see that. She was so furious and said, why do I have to live in an apartment like this even though I'm rich? That's why I told her I've always dreamed of living in an apartment because I've always lived in big houses, but she hates the idea of living in such a small place. Well, she would say that, wouldn't she? And now, my parents are saying, how long do we have to live in this cramped place? I told them to wait because the house is being built, but then she started demanding to see the house under construction. I asked her if she didn't believe me. It would be crazy to believe you, given all the lies. I got told something similar. I'm amazed you can keep stacking up lies like that. Maybe you should have been a con artist? That's too much. So she left you? Yeah, eventually, she couldn't take it anymore and said, let's live together again once the house is built, and kicked me out. Huh? Kicked out, huh? So now I have nowhere to go. My parents are with me, what should I do? I don't know. My parents are old, so I can't just let them sleep outside. Why don't you sleep in a hostel? They're aged. How can they do that? Plus, all our stuff got thrown out. How could you be so heartless? I don't know. You reap what you sow, instead of blaming others, maybe you should reflect on your actions. Look, I can't marry her without a house. Let me stay in that house. If we stay like this, my parents might get sick. I can't help you with that. Please help me, I'm begging you. How about I rent it to you for $5,000 a month? $5,000 a month? That's impossible. How much do you think I make? Before you were transferred, you were making about $3,000, right? Now that you're just arranging deliveries, it must be around $2,000. Yeah, that's right. My salary has dropped by $1,000. But it's easy, isn't it? Well, it's easy, but you said you wanted to live easily, so this situation suits you perfectly. But with a salary of $2,000, how can I afford to pay $5,000? That's why an apartment suits you better. It might be right for my salary, but it's nowhere near big enough. You know that. There are 4 of us, my parents and Sarah. That house is the best option for us. Then pay $5,000, and I'll let you rent it. That's ridiculous. I can't afford that. Then you'll just have to give up. You need to figure it out yourself. I'm asking because I can't handle it on my own. Plus, my parents are really extravagant. They're even talking about staying at luxury hotels now, can you believe it? Oh, they got used to spending money when they were using my credit card, remember? They've become accustomed to it after being poor originally. Tough situation. Exactly. I don't understand why they've become so extravagant. When I was a kid, we used to be so frugal. I'd get scolded for leaving the water running, and if I left food on my plate, the same dish would keep appearing until I finished it. Eventually, it would just dry out. We were that frugal, but now this? That's because they were using my card all the time. And it was a black card, so it had no limits. Your card, that was mine, right? Have you ever seen the bill? You never paid a cent. I covered everything. Is that right? Yes, I did that to spare you any trouble. You were able to act all high and mighty without knowing anything. I was really trying hard for your parents. Is that so? Okay. Let's get married again. What? If we get married, I won't have to worry about money. I can put up with you being gloomy and unsociable. And what about your girlfriend? She can just be my mistress. Oh, you're not marrying her? No way. She's a beautiful woman with a terrible personality. You're actually better suited for me. So, let's remarry and start over. Oh really? You know, Sarah is here right now. We've been listening to you on speaker mode. What? Why is Sarah there? She became suspicious if what you were saying was true or not, so she came to me to verify. Everything you've been saying has been heard by her too. Sarah, it's all a misunderstanding. I love you. Enough. You liar. Sarah finally realized Brian's lies and yelled at him in anger as she declared their breakup. Afterward, Brian apparently tried everything he could to win her back. Irritated by his persistence, Sarah, seeking to get even with Brian, approached me for advice on how to retaliate. So I suggested, how about I sue him for alimony? You can see him suffer from the debt. She liked the idea. Even after that, Brian kept pursuing her, and she finally moved to another state. When she settled down, I contacted Brian, saying, "You were supposed to pay me alimony, so pay up at once or I will garnish your wages." He cried out in disbelief. Despite his pleas to get back together, I refused, saying our divorce made it none of my concern. Meanwhile, his parents' spending habits didn't improve, and with monthly bills and alimony payments, he ended up juggling day and night jobs, visibly losing weight. As for me, I returned to my family home after breaking up with him. Free from stress and personal distractions, I recently found a compatible business partner and am living my best life.